In all of Roman history, no name conjures more scandal and fascination than Caligula. The emperor remembered not for triumphs, but for terror. His reign was short, his rule unstable, and yet his legend endures as one of the darkest tales of power and perversion. Welcome back to our channel, where we peel back the hidden history of sex and sexuality across the ages. Today, we re-entering the palace of Rome as most infamous ruler, to uncover the most terrifying sexual rituals of Caligula the Mad Emperor. When young Gaius, nicknamed Caligula, Little Boots, took power at just 24, Rome expected hope. His father, Germanicus, had been adored, and the people cheered when the boy ascended. But behind the charm was a man scarred by trauma, paranoia, and years spent watching his family destroyed by intrigue. And once he wore the purple robe of emperor, his demons spilled outward. Power became theater, pleasure became weapon, and sex, for Caligula, became ritual. At first Rome welcomed him, but the banquets told another story. Picture it: marble halls glittering with oil lamps, tables heavy with meat and wine, nobles seated nervously under the emperor's gaze. Then, with a smile, Caligula points to a senator's wife, escorts her away before her husband's eyes, and returns minutes later mocking her performance for the whole table to hear. To refuse was treason. To endure was humiliation. These were not private affairs. They were public displays, reminders that no marriage, no man, no tradition was beyond his reach. And then came the whispers of incest. His sisters, Drusilla, Julia Livilla, Agrippina, were said to be more than siblings. Drusilla especially was paraded as though she were his empress, seated at banquets taken on campaigns, treated as his partner in rule. When she died young, Caligula's grief turned into ritual. He declared her a goddess, ordered mourning across the empire, and threatened death to anyone who failed to grieve. To Romans, incest was unthinkable, but to flaunt it as holy. That was terror in divine disguise. But his palace was only one stage. On the shimmering waters of Baiae, Caligula built floating palaces, massive ships with gardens, fountains, and banquet halls drifting across the bay. These weren't luxury yachts, they were theaters of excess. Senators, generals, and nobles boarded them knowing they might never leave unscarred. Feasts became orgies, games became humiliations, and laughter always masked dread. Archaeological remains from Lake Nemi confirm these ships were real. Extravagant marvels built for indulgence at imperial scale. Religion, too, was dragged into his rituals. Rome's gods, its most sacred traditions, became props for Caligula's desires. He appeared dressed as Apollo, then Venus, demanding worship as both man and goddess. Statues of Jupiter were hauled from temples, their heads replaced with his own. The line between mortal and divine collapsed as he staged ceremonies in which sex and blasphemy merged. Staffed not only with slaves but with the wives and daughters of Rome's nobility, forced to serve under the emperor's watch as their families paid fees. For Caligula, sex was not about passion, it was about control. He used it to break men, to humiliate families, to desecrate the very foundations of Roman life. Even cruelty became part of the performance. Stories tell of him mingling torture with pleasure, of arousal sparked not by intimacy, but by fear and pain. Whether every detail was true or not, the effect was the same: an emperor who turned desire into domination, ritual into nightmare. And yet, this is where history and legend blur. Our accounts come from Suetonius, Cassius Dio, and others, men writing years later, often with reasons to vilify him. Did Caligula really commit every sin they described? Or was his memory darkened to justify his assassination? Perhaps some tales were exaggerations, but even rumors reveal truth. The Rome of Caligula lived in fear, uncertain which taboo would fall next. That fear itself was real, and it made his legend immortal. When at last the Praetorian Guard turned on him, stabbing him to death in the palace, it was not only a political coup, it was an exorcism. Rome sought to purge itself of the terror, the rituals of humiliation, the blasphemies that had unmoored the empire. Yet his name lived on, not as a statesman or soldier, but as a warning. The man who turned sex into the sharpest weapon of tyranny. And here we are, nearly 2,000 years later, still haunted by the legend. The most terrifying sexual rituals of Caligula are more than lurid gossip. They are reminders of how intimacy can be twisted into power, how rituals meant for love can be transformed into tools of fear. Now we want to hear from you. Which of Caligula's rituals shocked you most? The incest rumors, the floating palaces, the desecration of temples, or the palace brothel that humiliated Rome's nobility? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to see what surprised you most. And don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the hidden history of sex and sexuality, because the past is full of secrets waiting to be uncovered, and together, we'll keep bringing them into the light.